Welcome back to Book Break, and especially welcome to any historical fiction fans. In this video, I'm going to recommend some of the best diverse historical fiction. So shows like Bridgerton, I think, have really spurred an increase in the amount of historical fiction we're all wanting to read at the moment, and especially have reminded us that historical fiction doesn't just have to be about one kind of person. It doesn't just have to be about straight white people, for example. So I have got some fab historical fiction to recommend to you today that showcases the diversity of experiences that people have lived through history. And I would love to know your recommendations. This is just a small selection. I really want to hear any more books that you would like to suggest, so do put those in the comment section below. And if you are here for the Bridgerton vibes, I suggest you stick around to the end because my last book is just for you. So I'm going to start with this massive book, To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. This is divided into 3 timelines, one in the 1890s, one in the 1990s, and then one in the future in the 2090s. So in the 1890s, we are introduced to an alternate America, where the free states, which includes New York, have one major difference that you'll notice as soon as you start reading this book, which is that same-sex marriage is legal. In the second section, which is set in the 1990s, Hanya Yanagihara takes us to Hawaii and explores some of the legacies of colonialism. And then the future section, obviously is not historical fiction, so I won't go too much into that for this video, but hint, it's about a pandemic. The Attic Child by Lola J has another dual timeline. This one is set between the 1990s and the 1900s. So the author Lola J was inspired to write this book after she went to an exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery and she saw these photographs of a boy, Ndugu Mahali. He was a young boy taken from his homeland unwillingly to be a companion for an explorer, essentially an unpaid servant. And so she was really taken with these photos and with the strength and the sadness that she saw in this boy's eyes. And so she decided she wanted to create a fictional reimagining of his life with a different ending. So in this book, The Attic Child, he becomes a young boy called Celestine, who spends most of his days banished to an attic of a large house by the sea. And then decades later, in the 90s, we meet a young orphan girl banished to the same attic, and she begins to uncover some of his history. Get those pre-orders in for An Ocean Apart by Sarah Lee. This is a historical fiction about the Windrush generation, inspired by lots of true stories, including that of the author's own mother. In 1950s Barbados, Ruby Haynes sees an advertisement asking for young women to come to Britain and train as nurses in the new NHS. But when she and her sister arrive, they find that England is not quite the promised land. And it's particularly heartbreaking for Connie, who left her daughter behind in Barbados, hoping to find a better life for both of them. So make sure you've got that one pre-ordered so you don't miss that when it comes out. Particularly great for fans of Call the Midwife. Palolo Hill by Nima Shah is set during the 1972 expulsion of Ugandan Asians from Uganda. Whole families were given just 90 days to leave the country, taking only what they could carry, giving up their homes, their jobs, giving up all of their money, and not knowing where they could go. So this book follows one particular family who find their lives torn apart by this. They escape to London not knowing what they're going to find there. Are they actually going to find a safe refuge? And they find themselves unwelcomed and far from home. For my last 2 recommendations, I thought I would finish up with some historical fantasy. I've got here She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is a reimagining, a gender-swapped, gender-fluid reimagining of the rise to power of the Ming dynasty's founding emperor. So we go all the way back to 1345 and meet the brave and ambitious sibling of a boy destined for greatness. His sister, a peasant rebel, takes on his identity and gender and vows to overcome destiny and rise to power. And then finally, as promised, I've got one for the Bridgerton fans, but with a sprinkle of magic as well. This is The True Queen by Zen Cho. So 2 sisters wake up on an enchanted island. They find themselves under a curse and they have to venture to Regency London to meet Britain's sorceress royal to get help breaking the curse. But on the way, they go through Fairyland, where one of the sisters, Sakti, disappears. From then on, it is up to Muna to navigate London's high society, find her sister, and break the curse. So this is Jane Austen meets high fantasy. It's got a really diverse cast of characters, just like Bridgerton. It's got loads of humour. I know you're going to love this one. Bridgerton meets magic. For more recommendations like this that showcase the diversity of experiences of people throughout the past, I will link to a video we made on diverse classics. This includes classics written by authors of colour, authors of different sexualities, authors with disabilities, anyone who has experienced life in a way different to the representations that we are most often shown. So do click through and have a browse, leave your own recommendations in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.